Welcome back, everyone, from the Wall Street Silver community. We have an incredibly special guest with us today. Today we have Daniela Cambone, anchor and editor at large for Stansberry Research. Daniela, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Congrats on your success.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to get into this and ask you some questions. We also have Lee Justo and Jim Lewis from the Wall Street Silver community. Jim, you want to get right into it and start asking some questions?
Well, yeah, sure. Thank you, Daniela. You need no introduction, obviously. Everyone on Wall Street Silver knows who you are. We're all big fans of you because you've been so huge in the precious metals journalism field for the past, 10, 12 years that you've been doing this.
Yes, way over a decade. Yeah.
What I wanted to start off with is get right into this debate that you did recently with Bitcoin and gold. And it was a huge success. Hundreds of thousands of people tuned in to Stansberry for it. How did you land this debate? What happened that brought you to the center of this is all over Twitter, all over the financial news, Bitcoin versus gold. How did you land this debate?
Thank you, first and foremost, for that introduction. That's really kind of you to say. And yeah, I want to say that it was an honor to moderate the debate. Definitely a career highlight. How it came about, I guess, for many, I don't take this lightly. I am the voice for the precious metals community. So Frank trusts my work, and I know he respects my work a lot. So he had come to me and said, I'm really upset with a lot of the narrative that's unfolding when it comes to pitting Bitcoin versus gold and vice versa. And he specifically had an issue with Michael Saylor's attack, as he sees it, on gold. And he really felt that, he has to go after gold's $11 trillion market share to keep the narrative afloat for Bitcoin. So it's a $1 trillion market cap today versus gold's 11 trillion. So he said, I want to debate Michael Saylor. Can you make it happen? This is over a month ago. So I went to Michael, who I also know and I have interviewed multiple times. And I guess that's another reason Frank came to me, is he knew that I had a working relationship with Michael. And Michael was on the fence about it. He's like, he wanted to know why, the purpose. And for Michael, it was important not to have a fighting match. He was like, I don't want to do a debate where we're talking over each other. He's like, I really would want it to be educational. And so the whole mediation began, and I basically had to make the pitch that, look, Frank was on the same page, that it wasn't going to be a shouting match, that we really wanted to do the most historic debate of all time when it came to Bitcoin versus gold, but in a very mature fashion and not, throwing mud at each other. But Michael wasn't biting, and I didn't think it was going to happen. And then lo and behold, on Good Friday, that's how I remember it, because I wasn't working that day. I was doing errands. I was at the UPS store, and all of a sudden I just looked down and my Twitter was on fire. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what is happening? Why do I have 5,000 messages? And Michael had tweeted out a poll saying, who wants to see this debate happen between myself and Frank Giustra with Daniela as the moderator? And thank you to the audience that voted in a resounding fashion. I think the vote ended up 90% yes. Mm-hmm. And he said, look, the cyber hornets have spoken and I will do this. And then all of a sudden, we had to decide a date, decide the topics, and we had 2 weeks to make this happen. Mm-hmm. And I really went into hibernation mode and started researching, and I was speaking to them every day because I really wanted to do a debate that they wanted and that the people would want to see. So I'm happy it turned out. I'm happy it went well, and that it's getting the reception that it is right now. So that's kind of the backstory.
I really think people appreciated that it wasn't remember CNN Crossfire, how it was just always so angry, attacking each other, punching and ugly, and no one I'm glad that you really took that sort of, let's do it respectful, let's be educational about it. And it turned out really well, I thought.
Yeah, I was happy. I know that it definitely, when there is some mud being thrown, of course it's entertaining, and and what that, but I was like, what are people going to take away from it if you can't hear what the other is saying? And that's why I made it clear that, you know, I'm going to be moderating it. My role is different. I'm not interviewer in this, right? Like, I'm not going to be grilling Saylor or Justra on their thoughts. That's, you know, up to you two, the debaters. But I would be acting as, you know, an unbiased moderator in it. So.
Well, I want to share, I saw on your Twitter, you did a poll afterwards, and I want to share the results of that poll.
I don't even know.
This was a poll where you asked who won Bitcoin versus gold, and the winner was silver.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, and people are like, oh, are you not, why don't you do a poll like Saylor versus Justra? And I'm like, because, you know, I didn't want to make it about that. You know, I don't think that there's one winner. The winner, you know, and I'm not saying this to be cheesy, but really was the audience. I wanted to produce educational content, and at the end of the day, everyone walks away. But, you know, make the decisions they want. But yeah, this is, you know what, the silver audience, you guys are strong, you know, and you know I have a soft spot for the silver investor. I've been very vocal about it.
I'm sure.
You know what I've noticed when I talk with a lot of the Bitcoin versus gold people, they're one or the other. But with Bitcoin, they don't seem hostile to silver because they recognize it's an industrial metal and a monetary metal. And so I don't see that same hostility to silver as a precious metal among the Bitcoin crowd. I don't know if you've observed sort of the same or not.
Yeah. And I have asked, you know, when I was doing the pre-debate stuff with Kaiser, Rickards, O'Leary, you know, I was like, what is it about the gold versus Bitcoin debate? You know, why were these two assets pinned? Like, you're right. Why wasn't it silver versus Bitcoin? But I think it really comes down to the fact that gold has been seen as the world's oldest and longest form of, you know, store of value, as a safe haven. And now Bitcoin has emerged kind of as the new gold. But you're right. They don't, you know, they don't see silver as a threat. And I think that's exactly for that reason.
Mm-hmm. Ivan?
Now, Daniela, you have so many guests over the years. How do you determine when you're talking to a guest, whether they're just selling you something or whether they're being honest and straight up, and whether it's long-term?
Who's got hot air? How do you figure that one out, Daniela?
You just kind of have to ask the question, the right question. Like, my job is to ask the questions that I think the audience would want to hear. And at the end of the day, you know, the audience has to make up their mind. But my goal is just to bring a variety of opinions, right? Like, I just don't want to have one side. So that's how I see my role. And yeah, I mean, that's really all I can do in my role as journalist. I mean, you know, I walk away and I'll be like, yeah, you know, they were just kind of pushing that, but I try and really not have them come on to market one point of view. So I want to have an open discussion and get a conversation going. And at the end of the day, like I said, you know, the audience has to make up their mind as to who they feel they can trust or not.
Yeah, so some interviews end up being total duds, and some of them are just blockbusters. It's just, you never can tell until it's over with what you got out of them, right?
Yeah, and sometimes it's surprising, you know, like sometimes I'll be like, I'm going to book this guest and it's going to be a home run. And there's just a variety of factors that for whatever reason, it fell flat that day, you know? And then other times I'll find a new person, and it happened to me a few times this year, you know, people I've interviewed for the first time, and it was a home run. And it was just so well received by the audience. And like I said, it's a variety of factors. Perhaps it's the connection that myself and the source have, the topic, the timing. There's just various things, but I definitely know when an interview is going to do well. Like, I'll walk away and be like, yeah, that felt good. And I'm sure you guys kind of feel the same. Like, you just know as a journalist, I'll be like, this is going to do well, or this is going to do,
we just did George Gammon a few days ago and uploaded it over the weekend, and it was our best performing video ever on YouTube. And my God, that guy is just so entertaining. He was just unloading on the Federal Reserve and all their policies. But do you have a specific one that's jumped out at you in the past 2 or 3 months? What's that surprising home run that you've had?
So I guess two people come to mind. And again, they were on I never interviewed them in my prior position when I was at Kitco over 12 years. And I kind of just met them this year. So one is Willem Middelkoop, who Max Krauser calls the Oracle of Amsterdam. And every video I've done too with him, and I have him on again tomorrow, has just been a home run. Like my audience, at least at Stansberry, loves what he's saying. So, you know, we just make great interviews together. The other person I recently discovered is Lawrence Leppard, who's more of a mining stock specialist, but again, the audience loved him. I would even say Dave Colum, who's a professor.
Awesome.
You know, he did really well. Yeah, the last video we did was really well received. I think it was like north of 700,000. But the cool thing is, he called me and was like, Tony Robbins watched it. And I was like, really? And like called, I think he wants to invite Willem now to like be a speaker. So you just never know who's watching, you know? So that's a cool fun fact. But Gammon I'd like to bring on. So I'm happy you guys got him on. You're invited to my show next. So
yeah.
Appreciate that. So I have a question. Now you've had such an interesting career. You started, what was it, 2008 when you got initially in the space?
Yeah, I started at Kitco in 2008 when gold was, I want to say, like $850 an ounce. And I remember talk of $1,000 gold was unheard of. Like people thought like $1,000 gold, that's crazy talk, you know? So I really got in at an interesting time. And, you know, there were some good years and some years where gold wasn't doing anything. And in those 12 years I was there. So it was a tough market to cover when it's in no man's land, you know?
Well, back then, I mean, there were only just a few kind of obscure websites covering precious metals, so it wasn't even like a factor to have that. And you built Kitco to be like this powerhouse. Now you've moved over to Stansberry. I guess your coverage of the news is a little bit Stansberry. Do you see like a continued growth in this sector? And do you have any plans with Stansberry to grow it or do anything different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thank you for that. Yes, I was a lone wolf when I started covering precious metals. And I'm very proud that, you know, we grew it to the largest commodities news desk globally in the world. So, you know, I'm very proud of the legacy that I built at Kitco News. And, you know, people see me now and are like, oh, it's so successful. But I'm like, guys, you don't know. I started with a knapsack going to PDAC, which is the largest mining show in the world. People are like, who the heck are you? And I don't have time to talk to you. And that's why I'm so grateful to guys like David Morgan, Frank Holmes, even Rob McEwen, who gave me a chance and a platform. I mean, we didn't even have a stage. I would set up wherever there was a spot, and hopefully I wouldn't get kicked out of to do interviews. But they gave me the time, and, you know, I was able to slowly build. It was a slow build. And then all of a sudden we just like really took off, but it was creating that consistent content, not giving up, and just believing like we're going to build, you know, just the greatest precious metals news desk in the world. And then I was recruited by Stansberry. And of course I have built an extremely loyal following, and thank you to everyone who has followed me over to Stansberry. I mean, my name was made in the precious metals world, and it's something that I'm proud of. And so I will definitely continue covering precious metals, but I've also really grown in cryptocurrencies. I've done a lot more crypto content, and it's really been embraced as well. But also, you know, with Stansberry, our plans are to do a lot more educational material, so people new to investing. You know, we've just launched the DanielaCambone.com site, which I'm very happy and excited to be talking about, because we launched the debate on this, but our goal with it is to be creating and curating content for people who, like I said, are new to investing and are maybe scared to ask questions. So this is the place you go to where there's no stupid questions, where if you want to learn about investing in gold or crypto or the stocks or trading, learning how to trade, like this is going to be the site. So we will, you know, still be covering precious metals, crypto, but the broader monetary system as well. That's why I have guys like Willem on, where we can go and take a deep dive into what the IMF is doing, monetary policy. So definitely a broader range of topics here at Stansberry.
Daniela, do you currently stack physical silver or gold? Are you strictly just an investment for cryptos, or what are you into right now?
Yeah, I think I've been pretty transparent about this. So yes, I own physical silver, I own physical gold, and I am also in the cryptocurrencies. But my main focus right now is I'm a new mom to 1-year-old. Can't believe they're already 1-year-old twin boys. So, taking care of their investments is really my focus. And that's why when I ask questions, I ask questions that I hope the audience would want to know. So when I'm looking at wealth preservation, I want to look at, what are the best vehicles? Is it silver, gold, crypto? So yes, I'm a firm believer in the precious metals, but I also like owning crypto. So I just always say to people, understand why you're investing, and don't just do it because your neighbor's in Bitcoin. Like, understand why you're embarking on this investment.
Well, a lot of and you interview a lot of the miners also associated with gold and silver. Do you personally invest in any of the mining stocks, or are you more conservative than that?
So I don't invest in the mining stocks because I interview a lot of the miners, and so I stay, I stay, completely unbiased there. But, in terms of holding physical, I see it as the same as do you want to own cash in the bank, right? Like, I see that as having a hedge and a safety net. I see it as the same way as as having, like I said, money in the bank account. So.
Understood.
Oh, no worries. What got you started on your career path you're on, Daniela? Like, all the way from the beginning?
So journalism, my husband will say I'm an anomaly in the sense that I knew what I wanted to do when I was 3 years old. Like, I didn't watch cartoons as a kid. I liked the news. And my mom will say at dinner time, I would pretend or recount the news of the day.
Nice.
So I just always had a fascination for media, and I knew I wanted to work as a journalist. What I did not know is that I would end up in financial journalism. I really thought I was going to be covering politics, really. That was the path I was on. And when I was living in Rome, I was covering politics until until I was offered, this is a long time ago, a job to cover Canada's banking and insurance sector for this magazine that doesn't even exist anymore, called Magazine Finance, but it came with a newspaper called La Presse in Montreal. But I really took the gig because I was just wanting, I was at the start of my career. I wanted to build my repertoire. And I remember going in for that job interview, and he's like, what do you with the editor in chief? And he was like, what do you know about like reading company reports? And I was like, nothing. Like, I had never covered finance, And again, this is a very long time ago.
Are we talking 2002, 2003? What time frame are we talking about?
Say, when was that? When did I start there? 2001. Yeah, 2001. And, I learned so much in those 4.5 years I was there. I mean, he was taking me to all the meetings, and I had to just learn fast. And I fell in love with financial journalism. And that's really where my career in finance started, like really boots on the ground and just a deep dive. And I had to learn fast. And then with gold, when I went to Kiko, I mean, I had never covered gold before. Gold is such a niche market. Gold, silver.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like a big world to us because we're in it, but it's really a niche market. So I didn't even, I knew nothing about the gold market. And again, completely fell in love with gold, silver, the PGMs, the whole market, the people, and that, it became a part of who I am, really, of my identity. And it's something, like I said, I'm really proud of. But yeah, so again, at Kiko, that's where I just took, I was fully immersed in the gold world. And there's a lot to learn, a lot to learn. And now I'm happy to learn about cryptocurrencies. I started covering it, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years ago. So I just think that's the beauty of journalism. Like, I'm sure you guys probably feel the same. Like, it's such an incredible field because it forces you to keep learning, to stay on top of topics. I mean, I never wake up knowing how the day is going to go on or what I'm going to learn. Like, I know who my guests are going to be in the topics, but I'm learning every day, every single day. I do not have the same day. It's not Groundhog Day being a journalist, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of this field, of this industry.
I have a question for you. Going back to 2008, I mean, the landscape of the precious metal space was so different. I mean, I remember I went to a few conferences in Manhattan at the Javits Center, and it was all like people who were usually older than me at the time. So over that time, we've evolved. I think cryptocurrency's actually done a lot to promote precious metals as well. How do you see this whole thing evolving over the next few years? Do you see a continued influx of Gen Zs and millennials coming into this space? Do you see some crossover between the two?
That's such a good point. I absolutely agree that cryptos have done wonders for gold and silver. Absolutely. And I think the pandemic as well, I think it forced a lot of people with extra time at home to be thinking and reflecting, do I trust paper money? And they want alternative stores of value. There's a lot of distrust in government, in the central banks. So it's been, I think, an awakening moment for people. Because before, when you covered gold, you were like, people looked at you like, oh, you deal in gold or silver? That's weird, And now it's like, oh, that's cool. I want to learn more about it. So I think, maybe you guys have encountered that as well. But this embrace, like, look, I was working on Wall Street. I was one of the few people covering gold, and all the other journalists kind of looked like, oh, you cover gold, like, and now I'm like, I cover gold and crypto, and I'm proud of it. Like, this is the future. Yeah. So I definitely think that. And, and going back to my work at Kitco, we were always looking at, like, how do we attract more millennials to the site and whatnot. But I think it's become a natural evolution. And like you said, I really think it's thanks to crypto. But I think we're going to see, you're right, like, the precious metals industry is a much older crowd. But especially when it comes to silver, like, most of the questions and emails I get are from the younger audience. So again, thanks to the pandemic, thanks to crypto, the demographics are going to change here.
You've interviewed Andy Sheckman before, I'm sure.
I have not.
You're not. What he's the CEO of Miles Franklin, one of the bigger bullion dealers, and he was telling me he was worried all his customers were getting old and dying, and what he's seen in the past year, 2 years, is a whole new generation of people who are waking up to silver and gold and precious metals in general as, oh my God, I got to be in this just to protect myself. The government's just doing insane things right now with policy. And that's what I'm seeing penetrate more and more. And with relatives and friends who are talking about these things for the first time. And you're in it every day. I don't know if you are getting any sense that this is penetrating deeper into the overall population.
Absolutely. I would have to agree with that. And like I said, just going back to my thoughts on the pandemic, I really think was a turning point. That's when I kind of really felt that shift happen of people who maybe never even cared about the Federal Reserve or who the head of the Fed was, right? I mean, I don't know how many people would be able to identify who Jerome Powell is, but I think that more people would be able to now, just because I think people are waking up. So I absolutely agree that it has penetrated and grown exponentially. So we're not niche anymore, guys.
But sometimes being such a prominent figure in the journalism industry in a niche field is actually an advantage, because you're now an acknowledged expert in that field, whereas a lot of these other, the CNBC crowd, they're sort of more broad, jack of all trades, whereas you're like a go-to person on this topic. You have a devoted fan following on this topic because people know you for the past 12 years, 13 years doing it.
No, and thank you. I know a lot of comments. People are like, why aren't you on CNBC, or why don't you go on Fox? And you know, it was definitely a career decision I had to make. I mean, do I go mainstream, or do I keep at whatever I'm doing? And I'm happy with my decision. Like, I don't feel I need to have CNBC on my resume or Bloomberg to feel accomplished. I'm very proud. And I love the followers. I love my fans. I love the audience, and I'm happy to be part of it. And I think, like, yeah, if I'm part of a thing like CNBC, there's a disconnect there. I don't get to talk to the people every day, so it really gives me a great sense of satisfaction knowing like the content I put out is really being appreciated by people who don't trust the mainstream media and want an alternative. And the same for you guys, right? Like, these are topics that are not covered on Bloomberg, and because they don't have the time frame they can't do 30-minute interviews with everyone that comes on, right? So we have the luxury of, we're not tied to advertisers, and we can explore topics, we can go in depth, we can cover topics that perhaps are seen by us taboo, but that people want to know more about, you know? Like, you're not going to hear about special drawing rights on CNBC, but you can on our channels, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's such an important conversation to have, you know? So I feel appreciated, and I'm sure you guys probably feel the same by our audience, you know? And so that's why I'm happy. So when people are like, oh, but you want to be on CNBC? I'm like, no, why would I want to be?
A couple of months ago, we cut the cord and got rid of our cable package. So I haven't watched CNBC or Fox News or any of those other channels in months. I think what I see happening is everything's basically going to YouTube, where you can find the niche source that you want to get your information. And that's why things like your Twitter or your Stansberry YouTube channel have just become, and Kitco's YouTube channel, they've become sort of go-to sources for people who care about this topic. Because I have no reason to watch CNBC. I'm not invested in anything they're talking about right now. So I think that's what you're doing right now, Daniela. I really think is the future going forward.
I think what you guys are doing as well. And like, you know, we talk about changes, and, you know, how I was one of the few covering this domain, you know, in 2008. But look how many people covered it today. There's, you know, and people are like, do you see it as competition? I'm like, no, I love it. I think this is great. It's like we're starting our own, alternative media universe, you know? And I think that there's room for more than one player. And that's why I'll come on shows like you guys, or I did, you know, Jay Martin's Cambridge House show. So I think it's great. I'm a big supporter of channels like yours and Jay's. For people thinking about a career in journalism, don't just go down the normal route. And I'll share this, because when I started in print, and then I went into digital media, but people thought it was weird, digital media. It was still very new, right? And it's like, oh, but, you know, the respect is still in print media, right? And it's like, how happy am I not to be in print media today?
Yeah, it's a dead end. Oh my God, that would be a disaster right now.
Digital media is the future. And I didn't know it at the time. It just happened, right? But I'm so grateful I'm in digital media, because, guys, this is the future. And I agree. I don't think cable news is the future. I think that's the dying breed.
Yeah, exactly. Some of these YouTube channels, they get more views than CNBC has on a typical day. And so, I mean, you're totally unlimited in terms of your potential globally when you're doing what you're doing right now. So, you know, hats off to you. I think you've made the right choice, but of course I'm biased.
You've had a nice career here, and you've interviewed so many interesting people. How have your views changed? I mean, because I know we've only been doing this for a couple months, and I've just learned so much in that time. I can only imagine what your head is filled with in terms of information and perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I started, and I'd be like, "Oh, we got 200 views." You know, I mean, this is a long time ago, but you know, it's been a long road, and I've seen the evolution of YouTube really take off, and now, you know, our views of some videos are close to 1 million views. You know, it depends on the day, you know, like I think on average, everything is at least over 20,000. Some are 50, 60, 100. You know, the views are great. The traffic is there. And that just shows me that this audience has grown exponentially, like, you know, incredibly. Like this is the future. But it's been a long road. So you guys will get there too. You know, I always say, you know, if someone wants to go into content creation, you kind of got to look at it like weight loss. You know, if you work out like once a week, twice a week, and you're like, why am I not losing weight? I'm not seeing results. Because what do we say? You got to be consistent. And it's the same thing with content. Like if you're only putting out content once a week or sporadically or here and there, you're not going to get the results. And yes, it's a hard road, but if you're consistent and you put out content every day, even if only 20 people are watching, I promise you, if you're consistent and you put out good content, the people will come. It's like, if you build it, they will come. I'm a true believer in that. Good content will draw the people. You just gotta keep at it and be consistent.
I love your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Yes. My husband, every time he hears me talk about journalism or content, he's like, okay, calm down, sweetie. You're getting revved up. He like pats my nose. He's like, calm down. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I just love what I do. And honestly, if someone else wants to do it, I want them to be successful. And yeah, I hope to energize that person and just say, keep at it, just do it, you know?
Well, we didn't start this just for the YouTube, you know, this sort of Wall Street Silver sort of happened we happened sort of accidentally on Reddit, where, you know, Ivan started that thing back in late January and it exploded to 20,000 members within days. And now we're up to 63,000 members. We're growing, you know, by 500 to 1,000 members a day on the Reddit community.
So do you also see the type of followers that you had to change? And I know you're new at this, but what are you seeing in terms of demographics?
We did a poll online, and a lot of our people are between 25 and 40 in terms of our audience. Probably close to 50% are in that age frame. Some of them even younger. We've had people in their teens posting videos or showing their first purchase of a couple of ounces of silver coins or something, all the way up to we've got some whales that show us 3 metric tons of silver as their personal stash, and we call that the Eric Sprott Home Starter Kit.
That's adorable. That's awesome.
Well, we really want to appreciate you and thank you again, Daniela, for joining us here at Wall Street Silver. It was really fun and we learned a lot, so thank you so much.
No, thank you guys. It was a lot of fun. It's always so awkward for me being on the other side of the mic, but I appreciate the invite, and congrats again, guys.